we have this giant transfer of wealth from the United States overseas, and that is in the form of trade deficits. And the way the system is supposed to work, no one should have large trade deficits for long periods of time. Things can happen. You can do it. You could have trade deficits with one country, surplus with another. But the notion of a country having hundreds of billions of dollars of trade deficits every year is not how it's supposed to work. We now are to the point where our trade deficits, they calculate them at about $700 or $800 billion. If you did it the way you or I would do in a sensible way, you'd probably be at $1 trillion or $1.25 trillion. So that's a transfer of wealth from Americans overseas in return for current consumption. And it has nothing to do with economics. It's entirely the result of industrial policy of other people and our being defenseless. So you ask yourself, what does that mean over a period of time? Why should I worry about that? There's a data point called the international investment position of a country. And that is how much, for us, all Americans own throughout the entire world versus how much everyone else owns here. That number is a negative $23.5 trillion. And if you said, what was it 20 years ago? It was probably a negative $3 trillion. So we have transferred about $20 trillion worth of our national wealth, and I would say the future income of that wealth, overseas in return for current consumption.
Can you explain that measurement one more time? It's what we own here versus what others own here?
So it's how much Americans own overseas.
Okay.
All over the world. Versus how much everybody else in the world owns here. And it's a real calculation. It's not something I did, right? It's a real statistic. It's been around forever.
And what would that include?
So
that they own here.
So they own $23.5 trillion worth of stuff. But if you said, what is it mostly? It's probably mostly debt. A lot of it's debt. A lot of it is equity in our companies, real estate. Those are the principal things that they own. Those are the big assets. Debt is a big one, but also ownership and equity. A lot of it portfolio. Now, some of it is foreign direct investment, where company actually comes in and buys a piece of land and creates jobs. Right. But most of it isn't that. Most of it is just they own U.S. equities. If you think about the United States for most of our history, particularly since the Second World War, we Americans were thought rich because we own more overseas than people owned in America. That's what makes you rich. Now we are poor to the extent of $23.5 trillion.